Wat krijg je nou binnen? Je kan ook altijd nog anders gewoon aftakken van links en rechts. Zo. Ja, stuur maar een signaal. Zo. Hoor jij wat? Hallo? En heb je ook een bron?
I'm a comedian in the middle of the afternoon at a politics convention. How well is this gonna go? Are you okay? Yes. I'm just gonna use the mic. Why not? It's here. It's being paid for. This is. What the fuck is the mic? Hello. I'm not Dutch myself. My name's Andrew. I'm Irish. Hello. It's wonderful to be here in this tent with you on an island off the coast of the Netherlands. Now, I should tell you, I agreed to do the gig because I'm a massive politics nerd. And when I found out there was going to be some sort of politics nerdery that I wanted to get involved in. Who here enjoys politics? That's what I'm talking about. That's never the case. I've never been in a room full of people who have said that. You didn't say that. Boo. Well, welcome. So who is from, who are you from? Irish people? Of course. If there's a tent and there's booze, there's Irish people. Irish people? Anybody else? Deutschland? Woher kommen Sie aus Deutschland? Düsseldorf. I used to live in Bavaria when I was a teenager, team. Has anybody ever been to Bavaria? I lived one glorious summer in a tiny Bavarian village. I developed a taste for lederhosen. It's a taste that has never fully left me. I don't know, have any of the other men here ever worn lederhosen? Ooh, you know what I'm talking about. Ooh, the comfort, boys. Ooh, ooh, and there's no pants involved. It's just man and leather. Oh, it's like being cupped by a leather hand. I've said too much. I've said too much. We have Germans. I assume we have every country in the EU here, do we? Welcome, welcome, my friends. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want the truth. And I know it's hard to get the truth from cheering. Who here likes cheering? And who here doesn't like cheering? You can see why a simple yes-no on a referendum form wouldn't necessarily lead to any clarity. We're going to hum. Texel, my fellow politics nerds, we're going to hum. The hum is a baseline sound. That means it's omnidirectional. So it's very hard to tell where the hum came from. And when you hum, you don't move your face, so nobody will know whether you hummed. The sort of hum I'm looking for is a dirty hum. Something sort of kind of like a hmm. You ready? Let's have a little practice. 1, 2, 3. Yeah! It's quite a fun sound, isn't it? The sound of 20 pirates agreeing at once. I say we strike out for the island and we steal their gold. Silly. Just the ladies. Fucking adorable. I think we all deserve to hear that one more time in our life. Just women humming. You really are made of sugar and spice. Come on, you can have equal thing. Knock yourself down. Now, Brenda, I will tell you, I am Irish. I have lived, though, in England for 24 years. Not only do I live in England, my fellow pro-European politics fans, I live in Kent, the most Brexity part of England. Wow. 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 It's an unbelievable place. But I've lived in England for 24 years. Nobody gives a shit. That's the reaction back home in England. How have you lived amongst the Brits for 24 years? How have you not lost your accent? What are you talking about? I'm not going to lose the only thing attractive on an Irish man. Spend the rest of me life with me Lego Hitler haircut. That was a setup, not a punchline. I live in Kent. It's unbelievable. The thing is, I get people asking me what Brexit's about all the time. It's incredibly demographic. The older you are in the UK, the more you want to leave the EU, and the younger you are, the more you want to remain in the EU. Yeah? That, the fact, they know nothing about the EU. Like in Ireland, lots of infrastructural projects were done over the years to develop the Republic of Ireland into a first world nation. Thanks for the money, you're not getting it back. But nevertheless, that's how we developed. But everything was badged with the EU flag. The parts of the UK that have not, have actually gained the most out of the EU financially. Cornwall, the northeast of England, Wales, none of them had the badge on the things. None of it. None of it. And they all voted to leave the EU. Right? It's so many. I live in this little seaside town full of old people. And they all voted to leave the EU. I'm fascinated. These are lovely people. I have to say, as human beings, I love my neighbours. But let me tell you, they do not give a flying fuck about the geopolitical, socio-economic ramifications of their actions. They're in their 80s. They do not give a shit. Anytime I ask my neighbours, why did you vote to leave the EU? There's only one answer you ever get back. I want a blue passport. I want a blue one. I don't like the purple one. I want a blue one. I'm like, what the fuck do you care? You're not going abroad. What are you, mid-90s? You haven't seen the upstairs of your own house in 10 years. Madness. This is the level that I'm talking about, right? This is the level of Brexit mania. They have tabloid newspapers in the UK that have told them for the last 40 years that you, nasty Europeans, want to either bend their bananas or straighten their bananas. It's that level, right? My neighbour, right? Big Ronnie. He's a retired plumber. We live, like literally, I live in Kent. I can see France from my house. Now, not all the time, because the English Channel's only 20 miles across, 30 kilometres, let's say. But even on a clear, sunny day, sometimes you can't see the rest of Europe. And then occasionally it pops up and bang, there's France, right? Now, my neighbour, he's got a giant Union Jack on a flagpole in the front garden, right? His name's Big Ronnie, he's a plumber. And he's often to be found in the front garden reading one of his British tabloids. Now, we moved there, myself and my wife, we moved next door to him in 2016 at the height of the Brexit referendum. And I thought, how am I going to get on with this man who's clearly a British nationalist, who hates the EU, and now an Irish arty lefty comedian has moved in next door with his Muslim wife? It turns out we actually get on really well. But how it'll be is I'll park the car every day and Ron's in the front garden and we'll have a bit of street badinage, yeah? Bants, I believe it's called in English. And he'll go, here he is, how long's it going to take you to park your car? Hey! Right? That sort of crack, right? And that's how it usually is with being Big Ron. But then when we moved in the tense months around the Brexit referendum, occasionally I'd park up the car and I'd be like, all right, Ronnie. And he'd be like, fuck off. And he'd be muttering to himself in the front garden, you fucking people make me sick. And I was really worried about, like, because I wanted to get on with Big Ron, right? So I asked some of the other neighbours, what's the story with Big Ron? Usually he's like, oi, oi, hello. But occasionally he's like, fuck off. They were like, have you not worked it out yet? I went, no. It's when he can see France. That's Brexit. That's the level we're talking about. It's a dilemma because so many of these neighbours of mine are massive Brexit fans, but they're lovely people. But I can't relate to them because I'm Irish. Nobody in Ireland gives a shit about the EU's not even in the top 100 things people in Ireland think about. They're obsessed with it in Brexit land. Obsessed. And obviously we're talking about populism here, which works on the gut. The biggest tabloid in Britain on the day of the Brexit referendum said, vote with your gut. Yeah, not your brain, where the thinking happens. Not even your heart, where your love comes from. Make the biggest geopolitical decision of your generation with your shite bag, where the food turns to poo. That's the level we're talking about. So I tried to work out what the Irish equivalent of Brexit would be, right? Because obviously Ireland is not a more rational island than Britain. Clearly not. And it took me ages to work it out, but I reckon if Irish people were given a vote on it, we would vote to leave Bono. That makes sense? You couldn't quite debate it in a public forum, just an underlying sense of, fuck off, Bono. Yeah. What I try and explain is how we have ended up in this Brexit situation, apart from anything else, is absolute absence of information. They know nothing about the EU. I'm sure you know this. You're my fellow politics nerds, right? The day after the Brexit referendum in the UK, the #1 Google search in the UK was, what's the EU? That is the level of absence of information. And without information, what are you left with? Myths, fairy tales, bullshit, right? I try and explain to my elderly neighbours, the only thing anybody in the UK needs to know about the European Union is it's the Republic of Ireland. The UK does more trade with the Republic of Ireland than it does with Brazil, Russia, India and China, the much vaunted BRIC nation economies combined. It's a pretty staggering trade statistic, right? I didn't know it until the referendum. It blew my mind. I have no idea what we're trading with each other. Presumably we're just sending stag doos at each other. Just at least 1 million arseholes in fancy dress on each other's island at any one time. Look, mate, I'm dressed up as a lady. Welcome to Cork. Who here's been to Cork? It's the second city of the Republic of Ireland, the third city of the whole of Ireland. They're obsessed with Cork. Right? You talk about regional pride. You've never seen anything like Cork. There's 190,000 people in Cork. Dublin, the capital where I'm from, is 1.2 million. But the people of Cork are completely obsessed with Cork. By the way, this is how they talk in Cork. Nobody knows whether they've actually completed a sentence or just run out of breath. Right? They're obsessed with Cork, right? This is genuinely true. See, the thing is, I'm an internationalist, right? But at the same time, I love quirky regional shit. I'm not against it. This is one of the things that populist nationalists have said about the EU. That the EU is, oh, they want to destroy us all and make us all the same. That's never going to fucking happen, is it? Is it? It's impossible. You know what I mean? Look at this. Look at Belgium and here in the Netherlands, right beside each other. Half of Belgians speak Dutch, but nobody in Belgium wears a fucking clog. Right? They wouldn't dream of wearing a wooden boat for a fucking shoe. Yeah? There is in British politics, there's always an obsession that one day, this is something that comes up always in British politics, if only we were more like Scandinavia. Right? It comes up in all British and Irish politics. Doesn't matter right or left, it's irrelevant. If only we were more like Scandinavia. Britain and Ireland are never going to be like Scandinavia. But they're so organised in Scandinavia. I know, because of the snow. Yeah? They're the snow people. British and Irish people. We're the drizzle people. Yeah? The reason why they're organised in Scandinavia is because if they don't get their shit together by mid-November, December, the snow will take the weak and the baffled. Whereas if you're an idiot where we're from, just shit carries on. Yeah? That's it. You know? Because nobody in Britain's been told any of the benefits or downfalls, whatever. They know nothing of the EU. Ireland's pro-European Union because we've seen it with our own eyes. Our generation, me and him. Yeah? I cannot tell you. Listen, I'm way older than most of you, right? I'm 45, right? I was 45 this Tuesday, right? The Ireland I grew up in was it was like medieval. The Ireland I grew up in was so sexually repressed. People used to write the word sex on walls and run away. Right? True? Back me up, right? Literally, I swear to God. People used to just S-E-X, ah! And then hide behind a wall and wait for it to happen. Yeah? That's the Ireland we grew up in. What does the EU bring? It brings humanity. It brings distance. One of the great critiques of the EU is it makes everything too distant. The elites are too distant. Sometimes you need a little bit of distance to get some fucking perspective on your lives. Yeah? That's what happened in Northern Ireland. We had sectarianism. We've still got this shit. The whole point of both ends of Ireland being in the EU is it gave us distance from this myopic fucking medieval shit. Right? This country used to be sectarian. Who could even conceive of the Netherlands being sectarian? But half of this country used to be massively politically divided between Catholics and Protestants. Still a little bit, but nothing. Sectarianism has no place in the European project. Hooray! Right? This is great. This is a good thing. For those of you who don't know what sectarianism is, it's basically, up to very recently, there was only white people in Ireland, right? We're traditionally an export market of humans, right? Yeah? It was basically, sectarianism is basically white on white racism, right? We had nobody else in Ireland to be racist too, but we knew eventually somebody would show up, so we just practiced for the last 400 years. The most famous example of sectarianism, there's two huge football teams in Glasgow in Scotland. There's Rangers, and they're Protestant, and there's Celtic, and they're Catholic. Yeah? And traditionally, they play each other every 4 days. Right? What I didn't realise is this Rangers-Celtic thing is all over America. Did anybody know that? I didn't. There's Boston Celtic and New York Rangers. But they rarely play each other, because one of them's a basketball team and the other one's an ice hockey team. But when they do, it's mayhem. That's all I'm saying. You know, apparently this festival's been trolled by Kremlin trolls. Come on, man. Let's be honest with each other. You know, there's either in our Western media, we build up the Soviet Union, whatever, Russian Federation, as being this massive monster. They are weak. That is the danger of Russia, is how fundamentally flawed and weak it is as a project. Without the Tsar at the head, the thing falls apart. The entire Russian Federation's economy is less than Denmark, for fuck's sake. No offense, Danish people. Yeah? Any kind of rule that you need to bring in new rules, new laws now to bash and intimidate gay people. How weak are you? Right? It's a sign of weakness that as a straight man you cannot show respect and love to people of whatever fucking love way they want to love. Right? Right? These are things. But just think of the absurdity of it. When Vladimir Putin was passing these fucking anti-gay laws around the time of the Winter Olympics, that meant that he had a meeting in the Kremlin. Him and his stooges, all there. Congratulations, brothers. We have finally faced down the scourge of the homosexual. Come, brothers. Let us celebrate at the ballet. Let's celebrate our straightness by watching ripped, half-naked men with bulgy cocks dancing around on their tippy toes. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous state of affairs. But the thing is, I think it's... I'll leave you. Look, I don't know whether I've been a comedian enough, but I've never been in a tent full of other politics nerds. Right? The reality of the situation is things are getting better in Ireland because of the EU. Listen, many of you are too young to remember. When I was a child, we were told if you went on holidays to Spain, you couldn't drink the water. That's like Spain is like India now. Do you know what I mean? It's that level of development. We've massively overreached. But it's time to celebrate it. It's also time to be proud of being European. Yeah? Right? Listen, let me tell you, right? The siren call, the person who's really victim, who's potential victim to this new nationalist shit, is me. A middle-aged, white, straight man. Yeah? None of you will ever be the victim of it. I'm the one that's meant to fall for this horse shit. Right? But listen, as far as I'm concerned, like, I don't want glory. I'm not interested in glory. That's what nationalism offers. The glory of it all. Glory's for the sporting pitch. Pride. Make you proud. I take pride in my loved ones. That's already boxed off, thank you very much. I don't need a fucking flag. Right? I'd rather go for the quiet dignity of rule of law. Right? Who's up for some dignity? Yeah? Yeah? You know, there's just too much shite talk and division. No doubt many of you share different political opinions. Fantastic. You know, fantastic. But, like, there's a difference between that and relentless division. You know? That's how we've ended up with Brexit in the UK. The British tabloids just sell division. It's the young against the old. It's the rich against the poor. It's the north against the south. Yeah? Oh, it's the Muslims. It's the Muslims against the Christians. We can never get on. There's fuck all of that happening in my home. I love my girl. She loves me. I'm Irish. She's Muslim. That's the fucking end of it. There's nothing but peace and love in my house. Yeah? Yeah. 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 I mean, you know, we don't go to the airport together. That's mostly because I'm a raging alcoholic and I want a pint before takeoff. Friends, I'd love to stay. I need to leave straight away and go back to where I live because it's my wedding anniversary. I think it shows the quality of wife that I have, that she went, yeah, you fuck off before dawn, leave me with the children on our wedding anniversary and hang out with your politics nerds. I wish you all the very best. I'm sure you saw the news this morning that Britain is going to be taking part in the European parliamentary elections. Right. Honestly, I had a conversation with a man in the pub the other day going, well, I'm not taking part in them. Why? Because the EU's undemocratic. You're not taking part in the European elections because it's not democratic. Right-o. Okay. Here's a flag and a biscuit. Anyway, enjoy that, Chief. Listen, I've never been here, Texel. It looks absolutely wonderful. Have a fantastic time, my fellow politics nerds. Thank you.
Another hand for Andrew, please. This was fantastic. Thank you. Right, we wanted to get you all going on a high note, and Andrew certainly provided that, but he gave us a lot to think about. We have come together here because we think our democracy is important, we think Europe matters, and we believe that we can make a difference. And we are delighted to have you all here with us for 3 days of debates, comedy, films, music, everything. But before that happens, I have the honor and the privilege to welcome my own president, the president of the European Movement International. Eva Maydell will give you the official welcome for this festival. Eva, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Petrus. Thank you, Andrew, for actually agreeing to greet us first today from the stage, because I'm never known to be able to crack a good joke, not to mention a political one, and I will not talk Brexit today. Dear friends, welcome to Texel, welcome to the Democracy Alive Festival. First of all, I would like to thank our dear host, the mayor of Texel, Mr. Michiel Uitdehaag. Okay, that was a good start. And I'm very grateful for the organizations and companies that have agreed, that we've partnered, and that have made the way and the entire preparation to be here today. Thank you very much. Dear friends and guests, I think that we have gathered here to celebrate something that we do not celebrate very often, that we do not have festivals about it. our democracy. I sometimes wonder, why should politics be so gray or dark? And I think that politics should be much more like what today's event is: inclusive, colorful, understandable, open, inspiring, and alive. Here we have all kinds of different people who are part of the political life and who are ready to celebrate European democracy. From members of parliament to activists, from ministers to artists and comedians, from trade union representatives to business people. It is what a functioning, what an alive European democracy should look like. Well, yes, we are all different. We have different professions, and it is quite often that we also have different interests in politics and in societies. Sometimes it may look like our interests are somewhat incompatible, but what we really share is the ground, the understanding that democracy is our common ground. Our determination that the democratic principles should not be left behind, and our common belief that democracy is actually our freedom. We may be different, but I think that one day, in each 4 or 5 years, we are absolutely the same and equal. And this is the day of elections. On that day, whether we are politicians or activists or artists, we all have just one vote with an equal importance and weight. This is the day that we all are the decision makers. We all decide what's going to happen. We all take the decisions that needs to happen from now on. That is why we should not miss this opportunity on the 26th of May and express our will to vote. I don't think this is just our right, but it's more like the ancient Athenians. Our vote makes what we actually are as citizens, as community, as society. And this day, this year, is coming very soon. It is in less than 2 months we are going to vote for the European Parliament elections. Many people say this will be a crucial vote, a really important day for the European Union. But I believe that this is more than that, because Europe is a construction. It is not a living organism. Europe is what each and every one of us makes of it. This is why the voting day is of crucial importance mainly for us. It is the day that we all will decide upon our own future. We will choose the way in which we'll design our lives in the next couple of years to come, in the next couple decisive years for the next generations. Many people speak about this vote that it will be a fight, and some even use much stronger words, that even it would be a war between different concepts for the future of Europe. Many say that Europe needs to start a war against migration, a fight for more security, or a struggle for our identity. What I believe is necessary is that we definitely don't need another war. We had that twice during the last century. We do not need any more fights and struggles, but what we need is hope and belief, real achievements as well. Because Europe is still one of the best places to live in, because we're the citizens who live in democracy, and we're the own holders of our destiny. We know that despite all the challenges, we can deal with them, and we can still continue living in peace and prosperity. I think we know who we are. We are the people who defend these democratic principles. We are the ones to respect human dignity, protect human rights. We're the ones believing in freedom and equal rights, and we respect the rule of law. We're Europeans, and we are proud to call ourselves Europeans. Thank you for coming today. Thank you for your energy, and enjoy the Democracy Alive Festival.
Thank you very much for this, Eva, and without further ado, may I invite the mayor to come and welcome us on behalf of the beautiful town of Texel and the island as a whole. Thank you very much.
It's truly fantastic, ladies and gentlemen, that I can welcome all of you being the mayor of the municipality of Texel. You're coming from here, from all over Europe, to the Netherlands, to our beautiful Wadden Island. En dames en heren, ik doe het speech ook op de belangrijke stukken in het Nederlands. Fantastisch dat jullie allemaal zijn gekomen vanuit alle windstreken van Europa en het land, hier naar ons mooie Waddeneiland Texel. And I'll also do it in some other languages. I hope the pronunciation is alright. C'est fantastique de pouvoir tout vous accueillir ici, vous qui venez des 4 coins d'Europe. Sur notre belle île de Wadden au Pays-Bas. Wie wunderbar, meine Damen und Herren, dass wir Sie alle aus allen Ecken Europas hier auf der wunderschönen Waddeninsel der Niederlande willkommen heißen dürfen. Que fantástico que podemos dar una calurosa bienvenida a vosotros de todas las latitudes de Europa aquí en esta isla bonita de Holanda. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Michiel Uitdehaag, Mayor of Texel, and I'll continue in English, but some important parts will be read aloud in Dutch as well. En dames en heren, ik ga even in het Engels eerst verder, maar ik zal een deel van de speeches ook in het Nederlands doen. We zijn immers ook met Texelaars en die moeten mij ook goed kunnen verstaan. But first of all, eerst even in het Engels. You've naturally also come here to talk about a major and important commodity in Europe, our democracy. This has partly been made possible by Emmy President, where are you? Emmy President, Eva Maydell, who chose our island for this beautiful festival, which we are truly grateful for. And it goes without saying, I would like to address as many international visitors as possible, so I have trumped the TSO by welcoming the visitors as well in English, French, German, and Spanish, and Dutch as well. They only do it in English and Dutch. I experience our democracy every single day as a mayor, whether this is during a board meeting or a council meeting, or whilst taking the Texel residents about the various different things which are important to them. The fact that our democracy is constantly in motion is sometimes you'll undoubtedly all experience in your own countries too, as well as on the European scale. The fact that the EU allows for free trading between participating countries is now commonplace. But which role should the EU take on now? We are all at the heart of the transformation, within which we are all confronted with choices as to which route we should be taking as the European community. It feels great that you're all going to be discussing this together on Texel during the forthcoming days. I'm also very proud of the local entrepreneurs and the organization involved and who have also been partly responsible for the organization, this festival. And even though our role is a modest one, I do hope our beautiful island will contribute to an inspiring festival. Ladies and gentlemen, the next part is in Dutch. Ik ga even in het Nederlands verder en dan vertaal ik het voor u. Dan komen jullie hier allemaal nog even om een groot en belangrijk goed in Europa te bespreken. Onze democratie. Dat is mede mogelijk gemaakt door President Eva Maydell, die ons eiland uitkoos voor dit festival en waarvoor heel veel dank. En natuurlijk wil ik zoveel mogelijk internationale bezoekers aanspreken. En dus heb ik de theeso geprobeerd te overtroeven door het in 2 andere talen erbij te doen, namelijk het Duits, het Frans en het Spaans, zelfs 3 talen. Als burgemeester ervaar ik iedere dag democratie. Of het nu in een college is, of in een raadsvergadering, of in gesprek met de Tesselaars, over de diverse belangen die er spelen. Dat onze democratie in beweging is, ondervinden jullie allemaal in jullie eigen landen, maar ook op Europese schaal. Dat de Europese Unie zorgt voor vrije handel tussen de deelnemende landen is inmiddels wel gemeengoed. Maar welke rol zou de EU verder moeten krijgen? We zitten met z'n allen midden in de kern van een transformatie waar we met elkaar keuzes horen te gaan maken. Ten aanzien van de vraag welke kant de Europese Unie nou eigenlijk uit moet. Dat jullie hierover in gesprek gaan met elkaar op de komende dagen op Texel, daar ben ik heel erg trots op. Dat geeft me een goed gevoel. En ook ben ik trots op de lokale ondernemers en organisaties die betrokken zijn bij de organisatie van dit festival. En zij hebben dit ook mede mogelijk gemaakt. En hoewel de rol als gemeente bescheiden is, hoop ik dat de mooie omgeving van Texel bijdraagt aan een inspirerend festival. The next part will be in English. Ik ga weer heel even in het Engels door. One major advantage for Europe's Texel agriculture, for instance, are the open borders and the same standards and rules, for example in relation to food safety. This allows for easy trading and ensures the products meet the requirements both in the country of origin as well as in the destination country. This is a major advantage, considering the fact that approximately 70% of the Dutch agricultural products go to our surrounding countries. The most important thing for nature and protection of nature on Texel is the European legislation, in Dutch Natura 2000, which looks at the value of the nature reserve on a European scale. The protection of nature reserves and species would have been significantly less without the Natura 2000. Birds, for instance, don't stay in one place. It's great that we also have a European network in addition to the Dutch, as we call it, triple N network, which examines, for example, whether there's a good distribution of nature reserves within Europe. The bird living on Texel, the spoonbill, on his way to Mauritius from our country, from our island, has a sufficient number of resting place whilst on his route. The direct influence of the European Union sometimes is very instantly noticeable, although this will differ per country and per market. For example, for our island, the measure of banning pulse fishing is instantly felt by our fishermen, an important pillar of our economy. Brexit also has a direct consequences for our fishermen, as the fishing areas are perhaps, we're not sure, but are perhaps going to be limited. In the Dutch football player Johan Cruijff's words, I'm sure you're familiar with this hero, Dutch hero, every disadvantage has its advantage. It has put the importance of a well-functioning EU firmly on the local map here. Another subject with attention will also be devoted to during the festival, and that's the climate issue. These are global problems which usually affect life on our island Texel as well. We would like to preserve this fantastic island with its overwhelmingly beautiful nature for our future generations too. It's no coincidence we have had a strong ambition to become self-sufficient with sustainable energy for a very long time already. But the developments needed for this won't be able to really get, but the development needing for this won't be able to really get going until we have firm agreements in place and introduce legislation at European or global level. This is exactly what we need the EU for. Dan ga ik voor de Tesselaars dit even in het Nederlands weer vertalen. I'm going to translate this into the Dutch for the people here on the island. Een groot voordeel van de Europese Unie voor onze Texelse landbouw zijn de open grenzen. En bijvoorbeeld ook dezelfde normen en regels op het gebied van voedselveiligheid die in alle landen gelden. En hierdoor vindt de handel eenvoudig plaats en voldoen producten zowel in het land van herkomst als in het land van bestemming aan dezelfde eisen. En aangezien ongeveer 70% van de producten uit de landbouw naar de ons omliggende landen gaat, is dat een groot voordeel. Belangrijk voor de natuurbescherming op Texel is de Europese wetgeving, Natura 2000, waarbij er op Europese schaal gekeken wordt naar de waarde van een natuurgebied. Als er geen Natura 2000 was geweest, dan was de bescherming van natuurgebieden en de soorten aanzienlijk minder. Vogels bijvoorbeeld zitten niet op één plek. Het is mooi dat er naast een landelijk natuurnetwerk, een NNN-netwerk, ook een Europees netwerk is, waarin bijvoorbeeld goed wordt gekeken naar de verdeling van de natuurgebieden binnen Europa. Hierdoor heeft bijvoorbeeld de lepelaar, die op Texel veel voorkomt, die onderweg is naar Mauritanië, voldoende rustplekken op zijn weg. De directe invloed van de EU is en was direct merkbaar. Dat zal per land en per regio een beetje verschillen, maar hier op Texel hebben we veel gemerkt van de pulsvisserijgevolgen. En die vormen wel een belangrijke pijler van onze economie. Ook de Brexit zal de gevolgen mogelijk hebben, omdat het vaargebied wel eens beperkt zou kunnen worden. Om in de taal van Johan Cruijff te spreken, wij kennen hem allemaal wel in Nederland, elk voordeel heeft wel eens een nadeel. Het heeft het belang van een goed werkende EU, in ieder geval ook lokaal, goed op de kaart gezet. Het laatste onderwerp, wat ook op het festival de aandacht krijgt, is de klimaatproblematiek. Het zijn wereldproblemen die ook spelen op Texel. Dit prachtige eiland met haar overweldigende natuur willen we graag behouden. Ook voor toekomstige generaties. Niet voor niets hebben we al lange tijd een hele stevige ambitie om qua energie zelfvoorzienend te worden. Maar de ontwikkelingen die daarvoor nodig zijn, komen pas echt op gang met harde afspraken en ook wetgeving op Europees of wereldniveau. En daarom hebben we ook de EU nodig. Kortom, Europa is dichtbij, Europa zijn wij. Ik wens jullie allemaal een inspirerend festival en geniet ondertussen van het mooie eiland. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to end my speech. In short, Europe is close. We are Europe. I would like to wish you all a very inspiring festival and hope you will take some time to enjoy our beautiful island. Bref, l'Europe est tout près. L'Europe c'est nous. Je vous souhaite à tous un festival qui vous inspirera. Dans l'intervalle, profitez bien de cette île magnifique. For the Germans, gut gesagt, Europa ist ganz nah. Europa, das sind wir. Ich wünsche Ihnen allen ein inspirierendes Festival und viel Spaß auf dieser schönen Insel. Europa está cerca. Somos Europa. Os deseo un festival inspirador y que disfrutáis de la isla. Good luck and have some beautiful days. Thank you.
A group of like-minded individuals, businessmen, simple people that really wanted to embrace what we understand as European democracy, that really want to be part of European democracy. And both the mayor, his colleagues, but everybody on the island truly committed behind this project. Because what we envisioned, what was our objective, was to escape a little bit the everyday life of Brussels language and the typical events that you get in the centers of power. We wanted to go out there where Europeans are, where they are running their businesses, where they're holidaying, taking their kids to school, or just shopping. We wanted to be at a place where the real people are, and perhaps bring a little bit of the EU energy here, so we can infuse it with the everyday life of our fellow citizens. And we found the ideal place here in Texel and Hindenburg, and we're truly grateful for the hospitality that we are shown. But above all, we are grateful for all those of you who have traveled from all over Europe to come here, be part of our festival, tell us about the things that matter to you. And before we let you all go out there and have your debates, your discussions, all your events, we thought that it wouldn't really be a festival without a tiny bit of music. And again, we looked around, but we thought for that kind of thing, we wanted somebody from the Netherlands. And Amber Arcades, who will be performing for us, is not just a beautiful singer with a wonderful voice, but she's also somebody who really cares about democracy, who is politically active and astute, and she told us she was keen to be part of this. So Amber, the stage is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just need one more second to get this mic set up. There we go. Hey Guido, you got that plate? Happy to play it for? Hey, amazing. Good night, Europe. No one really got you. I suppose it's hardly a protest, but I'm sad to mijn monitor iets meer... Mag ik mijn stem iets meer op mijn monitor, alsjeblieft? Ja, mijn stem op de monitor. Thanks for having me. This is cool shit. I released a record last year called European Heartbreak. I'll get into that title in a bit. I'm gonna be playing you guys some songs from that. I brought my drummer too. You might not. Well, he's right here. Let me introduce you. There he is. Are you getting that? Great. He never lets me down. Thank you. Do you want to, Guido? Do you want to check the guitar level? Because I got this pedal out and I feel like it's a lot softer. But as long as you're getting it, that's good. So this next song is about how, you know, sometimes you can start with a new love, a new romance, or you can start with a new project, and it's great, and you keep going, and then one day, 10 years later, you wake up and you're like, shit, what happened? I'm still doing this, and you panic, and you feel like you have to get out, and this is something that can happen like on a romantic level, but it's also something that can happen like an entire nation one day wakes up and just feels like they need to get out, man. So, yeah, it's about that. If you feel like running, baby, I do too. We sailed for a future that we hardly knew. Oh, I can see the pieces falling into their place. I can see the look on your face. Oh, used to be trying to find my peace. I'm tired of my rental and my fantasies. Oh, maybe let's take a chance and live searching for a change. Walk away from those bygone days. Gonna take the van and drive to Switzerland. Full of execution while we still can. Oh, we could still be making some sweet memories. Watch the world go down at our feet. I can't go home and hide in no love anymore. But when I look outside, what do I see? The future's going faster than I'm leaving, baby, and I don't wanna feel it washing over me. Thank you. I feel like I want to spend a couple minutes telling you about what this record's about and how I went through the writing process of it, just because I feel like it kind of ties into why we're all here on this festival. I started writing this record in the summer of 2017, and I guess the initial drive to start writing was some challenging stuff that happened in my personal life that I needed to deal with. And as I was going through this process of trying to give a place to the stuff that happens, I became very aware of like how we're constantly like cherry picking our memories and reshaping our own life story to make it into this grand episode of our lives. Like if I were to tell you guys my life story right now, which I won't, don't worry, but nobody got time for that. But if I were to tell you, it wouldn't be like an objective summary of events. Some events would be more important, others would be less, like to me personally, it's very subjective. We're just like creating this whole story for ourselves that we get meaning from and identity from. And I think it serves a function. And as I became aware of that, I also became aware that it's not that we're doing that to our own life story, we're doing that to the whole world around us. Like our whole world is built up from, just as much from stories that we tell ourselves and each other, this whole intersubjective reality, as it is made up from like cold, hard facts and matter. And this next song, I guess, is a bit about how it can be hard to distinguish between, to what extent something is real or to what extent it's just a story that we created for ourselves. I wish I could fall over upwards. I wish I fall into the sky. I know I've not given you all of me. I thought we would have some more time. Oh, is this the dream where I don't know quite what I'm saying? My words seem to come from a place I can no longer find. And out in the night, the moon's shining bright and I'm laughing so hard that it hurts, and the song's coming on in my mind. Thanks. So these stories we tell ourselves and we make up about the world around us, they also form a big part of politics, I think. I mean, even the European Union is a concept of that story. It's not real in the sense that we can touch it or it's like a factual thing, but it's like it's there. We all, as long as we all agree that it exists and we act accordingly that it exists, it exists. And like I said, I started writing this record in the summer of 2017, which was a busy election time. We just had the elections here in Holland, where I'm from. But we also had, like, Brexit hadn't happened too long ago. We had the elections, I think, in France and Germany around that time too. And in all those elections, the right-wing parties were doing pretty well for themselves with their very populist rhetoric. And I became aware that the storytelling that we do in our own lives is also very much a part of this kind of populist politics. They tend to like tell these big, sweeping, epic nation stories about our country, about our identity. And all of their stories seem to focus a lot on the past. Basically, in all the countries, the story basically goes the same, and that's that in the past, everything was better. In the past, before we had refugees coming in, before we joined the European Union, whatever, it was all better in the past. I'm not that old, so I'm not sure if it was, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't. But I feel like as humans, we tend to have a rose-colored vision of the past in general. So I think that's why it works. And seeing them work in this way and telling these stories, and that it worked really well, I guess it just made me realize that these stories are very powerful. They're a very powerful way to bind people together, to create a national identity, create a European identity. But they're also very vulnerable. Like, they're easily changed, and we need to keep retelling these stories and celebrating these stories that we want in order for them to exist. And I recorded this record in LA in the United States, and what I got there is that Americans are like very much into that national identity building. Like, and if you walk around, like every street corner, there'll be like 10 American flags. Like, they forget like every 10 meters what country they're in. It's crazy. And they start every day at school with the Pledge of Allegiance. Like, I'm not saying we should do this kind of stuff in Europe, because actually I think that stuff's pretty horrible, and I'm glad we don't do that. But what I think we can take away from that is to not be afraid to celebrate our European identity more. And I think events like this are a great way to do that. So yeah, cheers to this event, and thanks for having me here. I have one more song. It's a rocker. I just have to instruct my drummer to play the right song. I think this is it. There we go. Entirely, and Thank you. Have a great festival. I'll see you around.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful indeed. That was wonderful. Yeah, somebody will come and take it. And a small apology, the heating seemed to have given up on us halfway through the opening ceremony, so but we got it working again, and hopefully we're going to warm up the place. Hold your seats, stay where you are. We're going to clear the stage. We're going to replace the musical instruments with armchairs, because we're going to have one of those old school debates. We couldn't do without one of those. The whole idea behind the Democracy Festival came about a while back. Actually, myself and my colleague Mas, who you're seeing bringing stuff up there, were on a Friday afternoon finishing work in the office, and we're thinking, you know what would be really cool? To do a Democracy Festival. A year and a half later, here we are. But there is also a bit of a story behind it. It was about 2016, 2017, like Aber said, the vote to leave the EU had happened in the UK, and there were elections all over the place, and authoritarian, undemocratic politicians were really taking hold. And we got really concerned about our democracy. We thought that there is a real risk that what we take for granted might slip away from us. And that's why we decided to set up the Alliance for Democracy. This was a collection of organizations coming from all sides of society, representing trade unions, employer organizations, NGOs, environmentalists, local government, all of them representing citizens, and all of them being genuinely concerned about the state of European democracy and the threats that it is facing it. So we gathered all those organizations, and we started working, campaigning, discreetly but also vocally, all over Europe. And today's gathering, the festival we're doing now, it's to a large extent the culmination of that work. It's the coming together of all these different stakeholders and citizens' campaigns, initiatives, who have come together to speak for democracy. So our next panel discussion will feature some of them. It will have people from across society talking about why democracy is important to them and what we need to do to strengthen it and defend it. So bear with us for a moment, and we will be starting shortly. But in the meantime, I'd like to invite our speakers to slowly prepare themselves, because I'm going to need them on stage in a bit. Thank you. I'll be with you in a moment. of the European Movement International, even though I often feel more like a secretary than a general. Nevertheless, it's a privilege to have actually a very interesting panel. All the people on the stage are friends and colleagues that we work together in Brussels, but we thought it would be a good idea to bring them all the way here. And perhaps I will start from my far left, your far right, but that doesn't mean that Leo is in any way that way inclined. Leo Hoffman is the head of advocacy, or am I giving you a boost in your job title?
Research and Advocacy Coordinator.
I still say I'm going to say head of advocacy for Transparency International. And for those of you who don't know, Transparency is an NGO present all over Europe, advocating, of course, more transparency and campaigning against corruption in our system. Next to him is Jeremy Wates, who is the Secretary General of the European Environmental Bureau, the biggest umbrella organization representing NGOs campaigning for sustainability, the environment, and of course, combating climate change. Then next to me is Carlotta Story from CEP. CEP is, again, a pan-European network of organizations representing employers providing services of public interest. And next to her is Marco Cilento. You see, Marco, we're far too familiar. I don't even remember your last name anymore. Marco comes from the European Trade Union Congress, who again represents trade unions from all over Europe with millions of members, both in the EU and beyond. And last but not least is, of course, Magnus Berntsson, who is the president of the European Assembly of Regions, one of the newer recruits of the Alliance for Democracy. Right, as you can see, it's a very diverse set of speakers we have, and I'm going to start asking them all the same question. Why did you feel the need to join an Alliance for Democracy? Perhaps, Carlotta, you can go first.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Petros, for the introduction, and thank you also to EMI for having us here today. The question that you addressed to us is extremely important, not only in view of the fact that we have been working together, as you mentioned, for several months now ahead of the European elections, which are of primary importance for us and for our members, which are, as Petros mentioned, public services, enterprises providing also services of general interest across Europe, and employers. But before getting to the point, so getting to the question, and what is the role that employers' organizations should play and are playing in the framework of the Alliance for Democracy, I'm just gonna make a reference to an anecdote, something that I guess concretely explain why it is important that we stay united and we we participate into this Alliance for Democracy all together. And that's the fact that while preparing this panel this morning, I did what I usually do in this kind of situation, meaning that I entered a few keywords: democracy, civil rights, human rights on Google in Italian. So I was astonished and negatively surprised by seeing that actually the automatic association that Google made regarding democracy was to put it with Salvini. So for those of you who still do not know who I'm talking about, Matteo Salvini is, well, I should say our Ministry of Interior, but actually it's the Italian Ministry of Interior, and is also well known because of a decree also known as security decree, that was voted as a law, so now it's a law, and with all the anti-democratic measures that this government taken in the past months, this one was one of the worst, I would say, because it revoked, amongst the other things, amongst the other measures that were taken, it revoked the right to be granted asylum protection on the basis of humanitarian ground. So that's one of the most concrete examples that brings me to say that we need democracy. As European social partners, together with our colleagues from the trade unions, which Marco represents here with us today, we decided to issue a democracy, a statement for democracy jointly on the last 19th of March to point out the importance for citizens to go out there on the 26th of March and vote. And vote because we need to be stronger, united, and forward-looking. The services that our members are providing, that we are providing, which are public services, are suffering very much right now. We are going through a moment in which we need to invest more in these essential services. Just take a minute of your time and think about how Europe would look like if we didn't have transport services, public transport services, or healthcare, or education, or all those services that are currently provided, and if those services wouldn't be as efficient and affordable as they are right now. Well, Europe wouldn't look the same. So that's why we started our cooperation in the framework of the Alliance for Democracy, and we're happy to pursue it all over it. So,
thank you very much. Jeremy, the same question to you. I mean, you represent environmentalists, campaigners throughout Europe. Is democracy something that your colleagues, your members are concerned about?
Very much so. It's one of our core values. As it's a political festival, I suppose I could take the liberty of answering questions like a politician, in other words, not very directly, but I will come to the issue of why we want to belong to this alliance. Indeed, we are the largest federation of environmental citizens organizations in Europe, and we bring together some 150 member organizations from more than 30 countries with a constituency of some 30-something million individual supporters behind those. And we've been working for, well, more than 4 decades to push the EU to have stronger environmental policies. And together with other colleagues, we've, I think, been quite successful, and the EU has built up a strong body of environmental legislation, environmental policy, which has really made a difference, and you can see the difference between other developed countries in terms of Europe's policies. However, ambition cannot just be measured by efforts, it has to be measured against science. And the science tells us very clearly that we are failing, we're not doing enough. Climate and plastics are the 2 issues that are most talked about in the public domain, but we shouldn't forget also biodiversity, the toxic chemicals. There's so much more to do. So how do we deal with these issues? Well, to tackle those issues, you need, in our view, robust regulatory frameworks, and you need those frameworks at the EU level. It's been very clear that the issues could not have been tackled at another level. So for this, we need a strong Europe. And this isn't about transferring nationalism from a kind of national level into an EU level, just replacing one flag with a bigger flag. I really like the fact that the 2 people who were entertaining us earlier, both Andrew and Amber, were both really making that point very clearly. We need to be talking about an EU of values, of strong values. So, yeah, why democratic? Well, why an alliance and why democratic? Well, why an alliance? Because we now need to look at these environmental challenges in the bigger context of sustainable development. We need a multiplicity of actors coming together to address these issues in a broader, more holistic concept. We're really happy to be coming together with other partners who share our conviction about the importance of Europe and who share our conviction about the importance of democracy, but maybe have different views about how to progress towards sustainability. So there's a richness in that discussion that we really appreciate. Of course, why democratic? Apart from the inherent values in democracy of creating happier societies, you know, how does democracy contribute to protecting the environment? Well, through producing better quality of laws, through nurturing public buy-in to those laws. And of course, theoretically, you could speculate on, you know, sort of an eco-dictatorship, a sort of ecological dictatorship, or authoritarian regimes. And you see a few examples where China moves very fast on renewables, and We in Europe move more slowly because we have a more cumbersome process. But the general rule, if you look around the world, is that the unfortunately growing number of authoritarian states do not have good environmental records. Look at the US, look at Brazil, look at Russia. So there's a kind of pragmatic reason. Now, how we make this alliance work, I think is still we're still in the early days, but we do see it as a really important way to work together. And of course, the other element that we so badly need is leadership. We need political leadership to drive forward this broad sustainability agenda. And at the moment, the leadership is coming from the youngest people in Europe. It's coming from the youth who are on the streets, calling for action, serious action on climate change. And that's the kind of leadership that we need to be seeing coming out of a new parliament elected next month.
Thank you. Marco, the trade union movement has a long history of activism, standing up for social rights, and of course, campaigning for equality and justice in the workplace and beyond. But what about democracy? Is it something that the trade union movement has been active in before?
Of course, the fact to live in a democratic country is the basis for the trade unions to exist in the way we know it. So if you want to have the possibility to come together with other people, you want to freely promote your interests, to balance it with other interests present in the society, and all the things that we need, the democratics in all these forms. Of course, when the elections arrive, we need to make an additional effort, because when the election arrive, we think that people, first of all, should vote, should go there and vote, possibly gathering some information on the meaning the vote they will have. So the alliance, for instance, being in the alliance is really to spread the message, asking people, let's go and cast our vote there. And then we start saying, okay, considering that democracy is important, let's try to reflect on what kind of votes we want to cast there, especially for the people we try to represent and the interest we have to represent. So first message belong to an alliance like this is try to vote for those parties that believe in democracy. And for instance, believe in the fact that the European institutions are an added value. It's better to have a Europe where common institutions, they come together with an Italian, a Greek, and Brits, and I don't know from what countries you are, to manage the common things together, instead to engage in long negotiation for everything we have to decide, because in any case, Italy has a relationship with France, exchanging goods with Greeks, and making train traveling from Belgium to Russia, etc. It's a lot of negotiation. We have the institutions, we can live in peace, etc. So first of all, think about voting for parties that believe in the fact that we can manage common institutions and compensate our interests in normal way. This is the first one. The second thing is these institutions can make different policies according to the political values you take with you. And for us, it's extremely important that there are different views of the society among the different political forces that are having closer relationship with the unions or with employers or with environmental policies, with youth, etc. And your vote is not the same, or the future of Europe will not have the same according to the values that the political forces that will come in power will be. For instance, you can have European institutions and political groups that will have policies that look at the last in the society, or more attention to specific groups. For instance, in the past we have seen what we call the famous austerity measures, where, I don't know, schools were closed because we have to save money to make the finances of the states sustainable. But you also have a different possibility. I mean, for instance, to make a law that says that the parents can enjoy 4 months of parental leaves, of day offs, to assist the children. And there are some that could say, okay, you can decide, mother or father, to take this, and normally the mothers take all the parental leave, so they stay home and the men go to work. There are other forces that say, no, I mean, if we have 4 months, it will be 2 for the mother, and two for the father on equal basis, so that we all have the same opportunities. So as you can see, the political forces that are in power have different views of the society. And this makes a difference for us. It really makes a difference. This is the political democratic game in which the unions can do something. Having discussion, debates, analyzing things, and saying what are our values. For us, men and women should have the same opportunities, not only the same wage, but also the same opportunity to earn wage. And we try to support those forces that we call progressive forces that have the same approach, the same view of the society. If we were not in democracy with a single views, the only hope we have to be lucky enough that the power is close to our interests. But if we are not lucky, we have no instruments to change the society. With democracy, we are always a possibility for us.
Thank you. I might ask you to pass the microphone to Magnus, since he is next to you, because I think especially when it comes to local government, local authorities, that's the point closest to the citizen. This is the most immediate democracy gets. And the role that regions across Europe have to play in connecting the citizen with Europe and giving them a voice is crucial. Magnus, what's your approach to democracy? Why are you here?
Absolutely. I'm representing one of the largest regional organizations of Europe. We have 150 member regions from all over Europe, not only EU, but also the wider Europe. And myself, I'm a minister for, a regional minister for environment in my home region of Västra Götaland in Sweden. So I've survived the winter, as we apparently I'm quite organized, I guess. Of course, this is something we, on the local and regional level, I hope, Mr. Mayor, that you agree with me that we need to take care of the situation as it is. We are always trying to do to take one step further to make the life easier to live or give better possibilities for the citizens. And it really doesn't matter what's happened. We need to always think about the present situation and start from there and be very practical in that way. Of course, we have our values in the as a ground, and I would say that democracy is very closely linked with human rights. It's also very much linked with cooperation, and I'm very happy that we can show that there's a wide range of the society that is here on the stage, because that's how we are also very used to working on the regional and local arena. We work very closely with both the companies and the civil society and the academia, because that's the way to make the society to progress, and we need to work very closely together. So I really believe that democracy connected both with human rights, with cooperation, with subsidiarity. I think that's tremendously important when we discuss all these questions that sometimes are supposed to be on the European level. Sometimes they should be on the national level, sometimes they should be on the regional and the local level, and sometimes perhaps in the families. And these are discussions we always need to have, but try to build the society from the bottom up instead of doing the other way around. And I think this is something that this is part of why we are struggling in Europe today. Sometimes the European project has been too much top-down system instead of a bottom-up. So hopefully on the regional and local side we can take part in connecting the dots here for our citizens to make it to everyone to see the importance of the European project that have really celebrated so many good things, as most of all that we have had peace in Europe for so long time, and we have prosperity because we can trade with each other, we can find that we have a very good inner market. So I think we are important players in this field.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more, in fact. Let me just pass maybe the microphone to Leo also, who might be coming in this last, but certainly not least, because one of the corroding factors, the one that undermines the democracy a lot, is the presence of corruption. Unfortunately, even in Europe, perhaps not surprisingly in Europe, how do you think the current fight to preserve democracy is undermined perhaps by the still strong presence of corruption in many EU member states, not just European states, but EU member states?
Thanks, Petros. Thanks for modulating the question as well. So we get to answer a few different ones. So we do like to think of ourselves, of course, at Transparency International as working on the meta level of democracy, working on the political system as such, working on the way how citizens connect with the political system and with their political representatives. And so, in that sense, signing up to something like the Alliance of Democracy is a no-brainer. You work on the environment, you work with trade unions, you work at the local level. There's lots of examples for these various issues that we all address, but that we address separately. And then there's some things that bind us together, and democracy is obviously a cross-cutting issue where we absolutely need this direct connection to the citizen in order to be able to put pressure on politicians to do the right thing from our perspective. That's the obvious reflection on why this would be important. Let me make a separate reflection that maybe is a bit more honest as well, regarding why Transparency International, in my view, signed up to this initiative, which has a lot to do with Brexit. So Transparency International is politically completely neutral. We don't support political parties or align ourselves with any movement. And that also meant that we didn't campaign for or against Brexit. This was in 2015. This decision was taken. Back then, it was fairly obvious that we wouldn't be saying much about pro or against Brexit. After it happened, and after we've seen what also happened with Cambridge Analytica, with the hijacking of political discourses, with digital advertisements really skewing the debate, bringing out fake news in a way that there was no accountability for, because you managed to show your ads only to people who agree with you, and you're never going to be called out on your lies. Seeing that then this same wave also led to a presidency of Trump, who is arguably dismantling the ethics system of the United States and running roughshod over all of kinds of anti-corruption and conflicts of interest protections, it became fairly obvious that this is a much bigger issue that really attacks the fundaments of democratic discourse and all of the systems that we rely on in order to make sure that democracy still deliver for people. So I think it was a bit of a wake-up call there as well, to try and become a bit more partisan, pro the institutions, pro the EU, in order to safeguard the very political system and the very democracy that we need in order to fight for our political goals. And the things that we fight for, you've already mentioned a few, but I would try and narrow it down on 3 points that I think have a lot to do with this EU election in 2019 and with the goals of the Alliance. The first is obviously to connect with the citizens. So I think we sit here a bit as representatives of, let's say, organized civil society, which is not the same thing as the people. So we too sometimes have trouble, connecting to the citizens, and sometimes institutions pay us to try and connect us to the citizens and so on. So there's various approaches that this can take. But we too, when we lobby political representatives, be that at the Commission, at the Council, in the European Parliament, we need to have pressure behind us from citizens that we can point to and say, well, this is what the people want. and this helps us a lot to get politicians to do the right thing. And often enough, we only get ahead if there's some kind of pressure coming from not just from organized civil society lobbying in Brussels, but from society at large in a way that is picked up also via demonstrations, via media, via social clicktivism, hashtags, and so on and so forth. The second thing that we have to focus on is to ensure that this language of anti-corruption that we use is not hijacked and is not stolen by the anti-system candidates. Because people like Trump or Brexit supporters or the Eurosceptics in Italy, both the Lega and the Movimento 5 Stelle, what they use in order to get ahead in politics is to just blame the corrupt elites and blame the system and really try and give the impression that they're going to do away with the system and really change everything radically. And then when you elect a President Bolsonaro in Brazil, then you notice that of course they just were waiting for their own turn to steal as much as possible and have absolutely no detail and no idea of how you actually organize an anti-corruption effort. So I think that's fairly easy to spot when you're an expert on anti-corruption and on conflicts of interest and on political ethics and so on. But the truth is that by just shouting corruption and shouting that the system is broken, these people get ahead and they, to an extent, discredit those politicians and those organizations that are actually working against corruption. So we have to be very careful there to separate that and to not allow them to sully our brand or use our arguments. And the third point is that, of course, at the same time, state capture has not been invented by the populists or the Euroscepticists. State capture is a very real phenomenon, and there's lots of data to prove that, of course, corporate lobbyists who stand something to gain have a lot more investments in lobbying in Europe, in Brussels, in Washington, in national capitals. They have a lot more money available and more specific interests that is much easier to lobby for than just to lobby for the public interest at large, right? If you're trying to lobby so as to favor all of the citizens, then you have much more diverse and diluted interests than if you just want to make the selling of cars more profitable. So that's of course a problem, and we know that in Brussels we have a huge lobbying scene, and there were nowhere near enough transparency to enable the citizens to judge their politicians correctly, right? So citizens don't know if their own political representatives, if the members of parliament that they voted for constantly just meet with the oil giants or with car companies and so on, or if they also occasionally meet an NGO or a think tank and get another perspective. So if citizens don't know on whose behalf their politicians are working, then it's very difficult to formulate a good opinion, reasonable opinion about whether they should be voting for these people again. That's just on lobby transparency, but of course there's much more here. There's rules on revolving door which are insufficient. There's all the ethics rules with previous commissioners going to work for Goldman Sachs or MEPs and so on. And this is why we have a pledge that we want candidates for the European Parliament and the Spitzenkandidaten for the Commission to sign. And as to the contents of that pledge, maybe we can get into that later.
Indeed, indeed. And there will be a lot of that in the next couple of days, both in terms of pledges, but also the things that we can do to improve the conditions. Before I release you all to go and enjoy the sunshine, but also all the different pavilions, and we have about 40 of them around, I want to ask one final question to all of you, and I'm looking for a 1-minute answer. We have a European election coming up. Not before long. One of the reasons why we're here is that election. If you had 1 minute with the citizens going around, what would be the reason for you why they should vote?
Wow. I wouldn't make this debate a national one, so I'll try to keep it on a European side, even though I'm very much tempted to reply saying that I come from a country that, as I said before, is striving very much to keep democracy alive. Why should you vote? Well, actually, I think that the answer for at least my generation is quite clear. we were born with this European long-standing peace. For my generation, I had the opportunity yesterday to have this Flixbus travel until Texel, and to share this bus travel together with young people coming from all over Europe. And actually, I really felt that all the people around were just feeling this as normal. For us, peace and democracy and Europe, it's a reality. We are not ready to think of anything else apart from what we know, and we do not want to give up on that. So basically, I would reply that we should vote, and you should go out there and vote, and we should all together strive and tap on that, because precisely we do not want, at least our generation, give up on the rights and on the long-standing peace environment we were born with. So that would be my answer.
Indeed. Magnus, I see you have been left holding the microphone, so why not go next?
I couldn't agree more. That is super important what you said. And another thing is, if you don't vote, you can't complain afterward. You're not allowed to. And this is much too important. The European election is much too important just to leave to the others. We have so many big questions, and not at least the question about how we are supposed to survive on this planet for us and for a future generation. And the European Union is part of the solution. And I think these really important questions is too important just to leave for others. Take your time and decide on to vote for a person or a party that you trust, and follow up and see if they deliver. But don't leave the possibility that you have as living in a democratic country, and you have the right to vote. This is not something that everyone on this earth have the chance to do.
Marco?
If you are a young woman, a young man, try to vote to maintain your passport, European passport in your pocket, because you may need to go and study abroad. If you are young workers, try to vote to keep your European passport in your pocket, because you may need to go abroad to find a new job. If you are an adult with your family earning a wage, try to vote to maintain your euro, because the value of your money will be preserved. If you are an old man retired, so you are likely to be retired, keep European passport in your pocket, because you may decide to spend holidays where the costs are more affordable to your poor pension. For everybody, try to vote for Europe, because it's an issue of peace and well-being for the future, so be wise.
Hear, hear. Jeremy.
Well, I think that the first answer I'd say to that person considering whether to vote is, look at the people who would have voted against Trump but couldn't be bothered to go. Look at the British people who would have voted against Brexit but couldn't be bothered to go. Those people are 50% as responsible as the ones who actually did go and vote for Trump and the ones who actually did go and vote for Brexit. So, they really have a lot of responsibility for the situation we're facing with those two situations. That would be my first answer. The second answer would be to say, look, a lot of decisions are made at the EU level. Now, we believe a lot of them should be made at the EU level, but whether you believe they should or they shouldn't, they are. So be involved. Magnus, you gave the example, you said, in your earlier intervention, well, a lot of things we should decide in a bottom-up way. And you're absolutely right. And, at the municipal level, you can decide whether you want to have a low-emission zone in your city. But the cars that are driving in that city, the engine standards are not being set at the municipal level, not even at the national, regional, national level. They're being set in the EU. And so you need to be engaged to decide what kind of decisions you want made at the EU level. And we also, I also echo the previous speakers by saying, we really have to value democracy. Voting is only one part of democracy. I think participatory democracy, there's other types of democracy. Direct democracy, of course, has a bad name now because of Brexit. But I think, the parliamentary democracy is hugely important. There are very flawed parliamentary systems The EU, the European one, is not the worst of them. Just look across at the parliamentary system they have in the UK. So value this system and notice that civic space is being eroded. Across Europe, many European countries, democracy is really being undermined. And you also have a chance through your vote in the European elections to take a position on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Liina?
Thanks, Art. Yeah, just very briefly want to echo those 2 points, just the sheer importance of the decision at the EU level. I think the copyright directive just a few weeks ago and lots of others have brought that out. Secondly, the terrible things that can happen if you don't vote. And then the things that I would add is that this is a representative democracy. So to an extent, going to vote, quite apart from participative democracy and putting pressure on politicians and doing all kinds of other things to really take advantage of democracy, but going out to cast your vote is the bare minimum that you can do and that you have to do in order to give at least an indication of what direction you want your political system to go in. So I'd actually go a step further and say that politicians are entitled to getting these indications via the vote, because this is a division of labor. They are professional politicians doing this all day, and in a representative democracy they really need to get a general sense of what direction you want to go in. And I want to add to this another subtle dimension, which is the generational issue, because I think when we call on people to go and vote, we mostly mean younger people who tend to vote much less than the older generations. And that is starting to have serious negative consequences, because the older generations that are going into pension now are the baby boomers. They were always the largest part of their society, because this was a time when so many children were ahead that they were just used to being the numerical majority. And now the baby boomers, who are still the majority, are pensioners. So they no longer care about the education system. They no longer care about infrastructure. They only care about the pensions, right? And we're seeing this across Europe, that investments in the areas that young people that still have a future on this planet would care about are going down, and that investments in things that are important for people who are about to enter into pension are going up. So I think it's also fairly important, and I remember a very hilarious video made on this topic, where older people explain to the younger generation that obviously they go and vote because they want to have all of those goodies, and the young people not only don't go and vote, but are also not that many, so that is starting to have structural consequences for the political system.
Perfect. Well, there is a festival out there going on with a lot of activities, so I think I should give our speakers the opportunity to advertise their events. Who has an event coming up? Marco?
Yeah, we will have an event on Our Future Europe now, starting now, in our pavilion, European Trade Union Confederation. But who wants to know more about trade unions? What are the trade unions for? I would like to invite you all for lunch tomorrow and Saturday at noon. So we can have lunch together and maybe you can learn more about us.
Excellent.
Yes, CEP has its pavilion right here. We had like outside the chance to organize a few events tomorrow. Today we will be hosted by the colleagues from the trade union, so you will find us there. But please join us tomorrow, starting from 2. We will be there with our Secretary General, and happy to talk about public services together with you.
Magnus.
Yeah, the Assembly of European Regions. We have a pavilion. You can visit it anytime, and so you're welcome there. But we also are having a discussion around the campfire now. So I think I'll very soon need to leave from here.
Excellent.
So
we'll keep it. Jeremy?
So if you just stroll a bit beyond that delicious smelling Thai food, you'll come across the EB pavilion, but which we're actually calling the One Planet Pavilion. Which is, the idea that we're living as if we had only one planet, which it actually happens to be true. We have a number of EEB events, but we're also hosting events from other environmental networks and organizations. There are events on the Sustainable Development Goals, on what kind of planet we should be living on in 2050, and so on. I'll leave it at that. The reality is that I can't remember them all. Petros has taken me by surprise with his question, but there's an interesting set of different environmental events in the One Planet Pavilion.
Thank you. And finally, we are showing movies at Cinema Texel. So we have selected a few movies from the annual Anti-Corruption Film Festival that have something to do with the EU elections or with the European democratic discourse. Today we showed Bellingcat. Tomorrow we're going to show the trial of Ratko Mladic. And on Saturday we are also showing a very interesting movie whose name...
It's all on the website.
I forgot. Anyway, tomorrow is at 11 a.m., so quite early. On Saturday you have more time, it's at 2:30. It's a very nice cinema, so I can only advise you to take a break from all of the discussions and relax in those cinema armchairs, where we will also be distributing our pledge that we want all candidates to sign.
Well, if we needed a reason, that is it. Thank you very much, everybody. I will let you go to your events, and we're in touch. See you soon. Thank you.